Greetings, everybody. Today is a very special interview with Dr. Christopher D'Adamo, who is one of my favorite experts on the topic of photobiomodulation, as well as a range of other subjects. That's why I really want you to get to know him. Really quick, I'd like to introduce you, Chris, and that is that you are actually a leading epidemiologist and an authority in integrative medicine. And I can say that because you have actually contributed to over 90 peer-reviewed publications and from the legacy that you have left being part of the University of Maryland Center for Integrative Medicine. And I know there's other publications, that's not all of them, but once again, it's an honor to have you on, especially talking about photobiomodulation, which is a fancy word for light affecting our biology. And today we're going to be speaking about very specific technologies as well as the topic itself. So I'd like to welcome you and let us know how you got into this field and why it's one of your passions.
Yeah, right on. Well, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate the opportunity. I got in this field because, I'm a self-professed health optimization biohacker. I love all this stuff personally, in addition to all the research that I've done. And, whether that was nutrition or exposure to environmental toxicants or physical activity, sleep, all these kinds of things, I had known that that was important for a long time. And it wasn't until, last few years we really dove deep into the benefits of light on health and frankly, the risks of light on health too. So we'll talk about today the high quality versus poor quality lighting and have just really enjoyed that journey and have dove really, really deep into it and have been living it also and look forward to sharing some really useful strategies, I think, with the audience.
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out because one of the reasons why I have you on is because, for some time I've had this love affair with red light, and this is my platinum LED. It's very hard to carry around with me. But one of the things that you and our mutual colleague, Tom Blue, introduced me to was the EndoLight. And it's an incredible device that, for example, in the morning, wake up, getting my kids to school, instead of going for my cup of coffee, for example, I can put this thing on and it does give me an energizing effect that I notice and has a lasting effect. So once I started looking deeper into it, I stumbled on your work and now I went down the rabbit hole and I'm just amazed by the topic. So I think today we're going to blow some minds and we're also going to give them some of the basics around this topic, which I think pretty much is part of the new medical model moving into the future. Light is, as you say, a nutrient and has so many healing properties. So, game on. Let's get to it.
All right, so I'm going to share a deck here with everybody, and um, so yeah, so there undoubtedly light is a nutrient. I'll explain what I mean by that as we go along today. Um, and I know that your community is pretty aware of photobiomodulation, but actually going to get into what light actually is. At a foundational level to understand how it impacts our biology and how it is indeed a nutrient. We'll get into a little bit of the history of photobiomodulation, which I think people may find interesting how long we've been doing this. It's an ancient therapy, and we've just had some really powerful and exciting advances in terms of the ways that we can use technology to optimize photobiomodulation. We'll talk, about some of the pros and cons of LEDs versus low-level laser therapy. This is an area where I think, there's not a total understanding, and I think we'll shed some light, pun not intended, truly not intended, but impossible to get around, I guess. And then talk about the EndoLight and some of the unique features that it offers and why it's become my favorite device in this space. And then how you can, this is maybe new to a lot of people, how you can optimize the effects of photobiomodulation with the EndoLight and just out in life with sun and other therapies. With photodynamic therapy, which is essentially using nutrients and other substances to enhance the absorption of light and the powerful physiological effects that it has.
Great.
So,
If I could
yeah.
just quickly remind everyone that over the years, one of the things that we've been focusing a lot on is educating people to just how profoundly light is part of our metabolism by default through things like structured water, which acts like a battery and is constantly taking in electromagnetic uh, radiation in the form of energy and information that powers our body. And so I remember going to Dr. Jerry Pollack's lab in Washington, and he had a postdoc there who had an LED coming right out of these water cells because they had been charged by the ambient energy in the room, and then they were basically creating light through these LEDs. And then the other example, really quick, is the fact that our body takes chlorophyll metabolites in the mitochondria and captures photonic energy with those metabolites. And that's something people don't realize either. So this topic is so cool. And now you're going to take us to a whole nother level of depth. So thank you. I just wanted to add that.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought up the structured water because first, I think they just had the annual water conference where they always talk about new innovations in this area. But that just goes to show you how powerful light is, and we're predominantly water. So when we know that light exposure to light can create the easy water, structured water, just another manifestation of what light can do for our health. And say you brought up electromagnetic radiation, that's what light is. We talk about what is light at its core. It's just a form of electromagnetic radiation. Here's the spectrum that we see quite a bit. You see everything from the far right of this image. So the real short wavelengths, the high frequency X-rays, gamma rays, which most people recognize as being harmful for health, even in the short term in a lot of cases. Now, where a lot of the confusion, I think, is on the non-ionizing side. If it's non-ionizing, it must be safe, right? But Sayer, I know you've done some work with the Blue Shield and with non-native EMFs and some of the risks that they can do. So the radio waves, the microwaves, and so on. They're there on the other end of the spectrum, really long wavelengths. And then you've got infrared and visible light and UV kind of in the middle there. And that's what we're going to focus on today. And the visible light, as you can see, is just a small portion of this spectrum of electromagnetic radiation that goes from, around 400 nanometers up to a little over 700 nanometers. And it's sort of bookend by UV light, which we can't see on the left side of this image, and infrared light, which we can't see either, but is very important photobiomodulating properties. And we'll talk about that today. Now, just to kind of frame all this, there have been thousands of studies on health effects of light. And, while it may not be as appreciated as widely as other sort of lifestyle and environmental exposures like nutrition or physical activity, I mean, there's just as much research for this, and it runs the gamut. By the way, that's a long link there. Perhaps we can put it in the show notes, say, or a link at the bottom. That is it's a link to thousands of studies on photobiomodulation. That's really cool, and you can take a deep dive on that at your leisure.
That sounds great. And just to add quickly at Green Mid Info, we've been indexing this research for about 15 years. And that's actually how I originally learned about the topic. It was just one of thousands of different topics. And I started to see this accumulation of research. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. But I didn't actually apply it until red light became a big thing. And now with these new technologies, especially using laser, it's like a eureka moment for me. So yeah, keep
Yeah,
going. This is
definitely. You've
great
had a lot
stuff.
of good information on that over the years, and I think as it continues to evolve, we're getting even more information out there. And there's good books on this subject. So I've got two of them pictured here. This Light Medicine in the Future, that one's published a while ago, and really laid it all out quite nicely and where things were going. And then the Light Doctor was published earlier this year, and just kind of like ties it all together with where we are now. And there is so much here. I mean, these are just some of the health effects of light. I mean, sleep is one that's pretty intuitive. I think most of us realize that are into health. All right, we don't want a whole lot of blue and green light at night or bright light in general. But other things on here, mental health, mood, cognition, again, kind of intuitive for people. They tend to feel better on a bright, sunny day than perhaps on a stretch of gray days or dark days. But the stuff like the skin, vision, pain's a big one. Even metabolic health, cancer. Going to talk about some applications for cancer today, and just longevity. This is where I feel like we've just scratched the surface in terms of the recognition of what's possible with light and photobiomodulation. Now, how a lot of this is happening is at the mitochondrial level. Okay, we all know powerhouse of the cell, but a lot more than that. The mitochondria is real involved in signaling much more broadly throughout the body. But light has an impact on you see the electron transport chain at the bottom across this. So blue light on phase one, you got green and yellow light on phase three, and red and infrared on phase four. So what you ideally want to do is to get exposure to all of these different wavelengths at various points of the day to optimize your health. And again, what is this going to do? It's going to help you produce more ATP, more energy. which will manifest as physical energy, but also, better cognition, better mood, better athletic performance. We are energetic beings, and this is the sort of the main currencies of how that manifests. Now, as Sayer and I both mentioned before, what else does this? Food. So food, both micronutrients and macronutrients, also work on these sections and these elements of the electron transport chain to produce energy. So light is a nutrient, and just think about that. Trying to avoid junk nutrients, just the way you would, junk lighting, the way you would junk food. It's the same kind of thing. Getting, healing, health promoting nutrients. What you want to do? You want to do the same thing with your sources of light, and we'll get into that. Now,
Well,
one of the ones,
really quick, just to
yeah,
emphasize that when you look at the work of Deanna Minnick, for example, it's all about, getting the rainbow of colors. And for a long time, things like, Gabriel Cousens and others intuitively were saying, hey, you need to get the whole spectrum of the colors of the rainbow through your foods. And now it's as if you're showing us some of the basic science that corroborates that. So, thanks for that connection.
yeah, Deanna's great, and I think just tradition too. I mean, I think a lot of these traditional medical systems had a lot of this knowledge, and it's nice to be able to wrap a mechanism around it with Western science. And if we'll take a look at that at each member of sort of the spectrum here, and we'll start with blue. And this is, I think, an important one to start with, based on that junk versus sort of healing light. Blue light, I think a lot of us think of it, all right, this is one that causes problems, and it does in the evening, but it also has health benefits, as well. So it helps increase nitric oxide production. And we know that, a variety of different, popular supplements and so on, that's going to help with blood flow and, blood pressure and just general performance and immune health. So blue light is a powerful stimulator of nitric oxide production. It also generates reactive oxygen species. You may be thinking, well, we don't want that, but there are times where you do. And, when you're fighting an infection, you want to generate reactive oxygen species. And we can really amplify this with photodynamic therapy. It's one of the ways it's been used in cancer therapies, actually. So this treats acne. I mentioned before skin. So blue light is quite powerful at that. It increases alertness and actually helps regulate our circadian rhythm. You do want to get blue light during the day. You don't necessarily want it from, a phone close to your face or a computer monitor, but you do want to get it. Problem is, you just don't want to get it in the evening because it's going to inhibit melatonin production. And the way it does this is activating the melanopsin receptors in the eye. So we do want to block it in the evening.
If I could just add, that reminds me of the Hungarian proverb around if you drink coffee before noon, it's medicine. If you drink it after noon, it's poison. So when you get the light exposure is essential. And I think there's a tendency to now want to throw blue light out, and you're pointing out, no, actually, it has extremely therapeutic properties in the right context. So thank you.
The proverb is awesome, and I think it's there's a lot that applies to a lot of different things, and light is most definitely one of them. Green is sort of the next over from blue. Think about this. We think a lot about blood flow. In fact, if anyone's got an Oura ring, or other devices where you're measuring heart rate and so on, that's measured with a green LED light. So this is one though. Again, you want to watch out with this in the evening. I actually, instead of the orange glasses, I wore the super nerdy red glasses because those block both blue and green and can help with sleep quality.
I had no idea about the Oura ring. I love my Oura ring, and that's what that
Yeah.
green light is all about. Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
Thank
the
you.
green light can be a little annoying sometimes at night when you're like, I don't want to see the green, but that's how it works. So the green LEDs are a way to measure blood flow really, and that's because green light can help enhance that, which is why again you want to get exposure to green. So
So cool.
it's cool stuff. Yellow light, again, we're just going to kind of go through the spectrum here. Another one, you see a lot of overlap because they're not far from each other, enhanced blood flow. But yellow light's really had a positive effect on mood. Some really good studies with using yellow light to improve mood. Also quite useful for skin. So you can see in the picture here, it penetrates a little bit deeper than the blue and the green. As you go further on the spectrum, it goes deeper and deeper. So if you go to like like a skin clinic, these types of places, they'll have quite often yellow light for rosacea and stimulating collagen production and wound healing and so on.
I can just add that I went on GreenMed Info to look for our yellow light section for laser, and the primary therapeutic benefit is for spider veins. And So, and also with laser, it's a more coherent waveform and it goes deeper. So, once again, another reason why the laser emitting diode is a good idea.
Absolutely. And the EndoLight has yellow on it. And we'll talk about later, it actually gets it systemically because it's in such on the thin area of the wrist, gets right into the blood supply. And most of the blood in the body passes through the wrist. And we'll talk all about that. Orange light next over, again, cognition. There have been some studies for enhancing the activity in the prefrontal cortex. It does increase alertness, but it doesn't have as much of that melanopsin activation. Hence, it's less disruptive to sleep than blue, which is why, night shift and there's your orange glasses. You can actually get orange or red light bulbs. These are smart things to do in the evening around the house.
Yeah, I put my night shift on pretty much right around the time of sunset in my computer all night long, and it makes a huge difference. So thanks.
Same here, and I think it's just a smart thing. As much as we can live in alignment with what we've got in our natural light environment, the better off we're going to be. And last but not least is definitely red light. So this is where a lot of the devices are red light specific and near infrared light specific, and with good reason. There are a lot of uses of red light, increased ATP production. You see the whole list here. Pain's one of the big ones as well. So a lot of good evidence for red light, particularly low level laser therapy red light, because it is more powerful and pain reduction. But this is one of the great ones that I do, like when I in the morning having the red light on to again increase ATP production and get a little bit of that energy boost.
Yeah, I just add real quick that on Green Mid Info, that's our primary section is actually, I'll just show it for a second, is on red light. So we have not an exhaustive list of 172 abstracts across 108 different disease applications. So just casually looking at the literature, that's what we got so far. But as you know, there's application probably to any organ or tissue in the body, since it's also dependent on, as you said, enhancing Krebs cycle and probably some other unknown mechanisms as well.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. This is a nice graphic here, just showing when you get that laser, what that's doing at the mitochondrial level, and the wide variety of health benefits that can bring about. An infrared light too. So one of the things I love about the new version of this EndoLight, we'll talk about sort of the history of these wearable low-level laser therapy, is that it includes infrared light, which is, these are just out of the spectrum of what's visible. The near infrared light is at least. And this is one that doesn't have a whole lot of heat. A lot of the same benefits that red light has. It just penetrates deeper. So all the way down to levels of muscle and bone. I like this. I mean, think about this too. If you have LED panels, you need to be very close to them to get the benefit. It doesn't penetrate very far. So, again, so that's one of the limitations of LEDs, as I'll talk about a little bit later. But we can see that the near infrared penetrates a little bit deeper. Mid infrared, this does start to generate heat. So again, these are all these nanometers is just the wavelengths. This is not used as often in photobiomodulation or PBM, more common in surgery and other applications like that. Then you get far infrared, and this is used quite a bit. If everyone's got like a biomat or these kinds of things, these do produce heat. You have them in saunas, heat pads. The penetration is actually not as deep as near or mid infrared, but this can be quite useful for back and muscle pain. All right, so that's kind of the spectrum, and we see actually a lot of of sunlight is infrared. More than half of it is. Then you get about 40% that's visible, and then about 3 to 5% that's ultraviolet. So sun is again that's the ultimate. I'm a big believer in getting some sun exposure when you can. Now, not all of us can. I'm up in well above the 37th parallel, in Maryland, and that's a line that cuts across the world. In the U.S., those that are below, it's North, South Carolina, somewhere around there on the East Coast, and the Bay Area and California, that area is above it. So if you're not below that 37th parallel, you're not making vitamin D during the late fall and winter months, which is all the more reason to have photobiomodulation devices in your routine.
100%. I'm here in Florida and I do try to get sunlight exposure regularly, but even those who do end up with pretty typical deficiencies. So, definitely helps, to supplement when possible.
Definitely, 100%. So photobiomodulation, there's our technical definition. It's non-ionizing radiation absorbed by endogenous chromophores that elicit physiological effects. But as Sayer succinctly noted before, it's really just how light affects our biology. And this is happening every day, whether you know it or not. So it's happening, to everybody. And some of us just choose to, intentionally, there's therapies out there where you can really get, more powerful effects out of this. And I like this image here because it shows what's happening with the different colors. So where are we getting this from? Well, the obvious one's the sun, but I think most of viewers are going to realize that if you're wearing clothes and if you're above that 37th parallel much of the year, fall and winter, you're not going to be getting many of the benefits. You'll still get some of them, but not all of them. But indoor lighting that's become a passion for me. You see in that middle image there, you really want to stay away from those squiggly CFL bulbs. Just not only is the light quality poor, they emit electromagnetic fields that you don't want. LEDs, a lot of the same, it's kind of more of a mixed bag, but most of the cheap ones that you buy at a big box store are going to be quite poor. When you can, to opt for the incandescent bulbs, harder to find now, unfortunately, or high quality LED lights that you can find at places like Waveform Lighting and some others. But that's a big source of exposure for people, as is obviously the devices. And you just see that blue light at the night is going to wreck that person's sleep and beyond. So that's just what's happening in our native environment. Then you get all the therapeutic applications, whether it's low-level laser therapy. You see in some of those images with LED panels or masks and so on. So I don't know, Sayer, if you got any thoughts on the sort of high-level PBM
Yeah,
stuff here.
I was just going to ask you too, don't the CFLs have mercury in them? Is that one of
They
the?
do.
Oh,
Yeah. They're pretty bad news all the way across the board. It's under the guise of sort of like energy efficiency,
mm.
but we also have to take into account human health as well and planetary health. Yeah, when you talk about disposing of these at some point, I mean it's there's some problems with them. Okay, so I'll give you a brief tour of the history here, which I think is pretty interesting. Here's a really good paper if you're interested in the topic. I mean, again, this goes back thousands of years. The ancient Egyptians had their sun temples. There's Hippocrates who used light as medicine. You had the Greek and Roman bathhouses where they used light to heal. In the West, or in more modern times, even the 20th century, we had the solariums. So for tuberculosis, that's what you see here, using light to heal people, a very serious condition, just in this instance, just natural sunlight. And then, kind of maybe this is the original photobiomodulation device. Fortunately, they've come a long way in terms of their practical applications. But this is Niels Ryberg, Finson, who actually received a Nobel Prize for this therapy here, this device that was also used to treat tuberculosis. So, again, powerful uses throughout history.
It is amazing that this is coming back into the forefront, thanks in part to your work, even because if it works, it works, and it's provided by nature. We're natural beings. It makes complete sense.
Yeah, we're coming full circle with this, which is really exciting. And if we get into, well, where did the more commonly recognized things like laser, and laser, just if you'd wonder, it just stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. So there it is. Initially it was red beams. This goes back to about the 1960s, and this was like high-powered stuff that you see there. Now, low-level laser therapy, like what we've got in the endolights on our wrists here, that was actually discovered accidentally. Was using to see, can this, reduce tumors, and it didn't at that time. But what they did find that it regrew the hair of the mice and improved wound healing. So this is they just opened up, all the potential of what low-level laser therapy could do.
I just
And
want
the other
to,
big, yeah.
to me, what's so fascinating about this discovery is that it was inspired by the use of ruby, because for so long, people in at least the sort of like new age spiritual community have been talking about the power of crystals. But if you go further back with the Vedic culture and then even more ancient cultures, it's believed that they used them for storing information and or technologies, likes of which we haven't even accomplished in our modern civilization, as evidenced by the pyramids, for example. So it is fascinating that this highly coherent structure, which is a crystal, can help produce coherent light, which is actually what it was first used for. And that's why, for me, when I use this thing, I really feel it's very different from any LED type of exposure. Yes, there's one LED light, but there's seven lasers. And that coherent light conveys both energy and information in a way that I think has a lot more beneficial properties than are described probably for through just conventional means. I don't know how it works yet, but I think there's something to this connection with crystals.
No doubt about it. I mean, against the wisdom of traditional medical systems. I mean, there's so much there. People figure these things out after over periods of thousands of years. And it is pretty interesting that it all kind of derived from ruby. I mean, you see, that's the original device up there on the upper right, and there's the little ruby. So it is pretty fascinating. Um, LEDs, they also have a pretty long history, though practically went back to like the 1960s. Actually, someone at GE kind of invented the original LED lights. And now, when it came to LEDs using for photobiomodulation or tapping into biology, it wasn't until the 1990s, and this usually was for plants. And you see there NASA, experimenting with this for plants. NASA again a leader looking at this for human health. So they've actually funded a lot of the research on light just because of astronauts and so on not exposed to it. Right. So, but it wasn't until the 2000s and really until the 2010s that the bevy of commercially available products really started to come. And when we look at the research specifically, and I kind of got into this earlier, it just covers so much ground. I mean, whether it's dermatology in the skin, oral health in the mouth, orthopedics, and even psychiatry, there is a huge evidence base here. And this slide actually gets into the numbers of studies. And there's been over 5,000 studies, and many of these human studies. But what I really want to emphasize is that most of these were done on low-level laser therapy. So again, I like LED. I've got LED panels too. But when you're really trying to tap into the most most powerful effects, it's really coming from laser. That's where the vast majority of the studies have been done.
So the light emitting diodes there, okay, that's LEDs. And you're saying where's the laser in there? Is there a way to
Lasers, all the others. So
I
yeah, so that's
oh,
all the others. So it's the vast majority of studies have been on low-level laser therapy
I did not
for
realize
human
that.
health. Yeah, it's yeah, I don't know that that gets communicated as well as it should. So I think people are just missing out on the full potential of what photobiomodulation can do.
Well, and because there is such a huge explosion of, marketing and sales in the realm of red light and LED emitting diodes, now to know this is a pretty significant. I didn't know that. Wow, perfect.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It came as a surprise to me when I first came across that too. And again, there's pros and cons to both. I mean, there's some nice things. If you get a nice large panel, you can cover with LED, you can cover a nice surface area. There are lots of options that are available out there. Most are red and near infrared, though there are some blue and green ones, and they're generally lower cost than low level laser therapy, though that's changing. The disadvantages would be the power is not real high. You need to get close to it. You mentioned before to really optimize the effect, and I know that can be a little bit inconvenient, as is the amount of time that's required to do that. And you need to have your skin exposed. So whatever you want to get, you need to have this ideally have the skin exposed. So the convenience to get the optimal benefit is that ratio is kind of skewed. Um, on the low-level laser therapy side, so some of the advantages, and Sayer mentioned this before, has to do with just the characteristics of laser in general. So the light is coherent, it's synchronized. You see in the bottom there, it's focused. So what that does is combine to give greater power and deeper penetration. Thus, you don't need as long of a treatment time. So you don't need to do this for an hour, standing in front of a panel for an hour or so. Disadvantages historically have been a smaller treatment area, as you see in this picture here. There typically have not been as many commercially available options because you needed to go to a healthcare professional office generally to do this. And these machines, you were talking $10,000 or much, much more. And part of that's because, let's say you have got got the device that's shown here. That could be dangerous, if you're not using that properly. So until quite recently, the low-level laser therapy was generally cost and safety prohibitive. And this is where I got so excited about the Weber medical wearable devices because they had both safety, power, and convenience in mind. And this was founded, about a little over 20 years ago by a German physician named Michael Weber, who had treated thousands of patients with low-level laser therapies. You can see in that picture there. He's president of the International Society of Medical Laser Applications, and his vision was to bring this out of the clinic, bring it out into the public, so that people could access these benefits anywhere, in their homes and beyond. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about
I was gonna
the.
say, I'm
Yep,
sorry. Yeah, I was most
sure.
impressed by this company because they have specialized in medical devices that included, intravenous. So their standards medically, because they've had to be so exact, and it's of course German engineering, is that they really know what they're doing, and this device feels like a really significant piece of engineering on your body. So it's not a plasticky type thing. It's just very built very well.
Yeah, it feels solid, and you got the glass screen and so on. I mean, the feel to it reflects the fact that it's several generations of it now. So this is not the one that's commercially available now is not where it started. And I'll actually talk a little bit about the first generation, because where we are now is up to 5 times as powerful overall as this first generation one that came out. And again, it's a relatively low price point compared to the $10,000 or $20,000 that you would need to spend to get many of the other devices that's out there. And it gives you, multiple frequencies. So you're going to get multiple colors at an angle. So the penetration angle to make sure that it's going to get into the blood supply. So it's worn around the wrist. And as such, you can wear it basically anywhere. So at the computer, doing a webinar, driving, travel, in bed. So you can put the relaxing settings on and wear it, if you're meditating or breathing or just winding down for the evening. And it is quite high power, and thus the time efficiency is better than what else we've seen there. I mean, I like LED panels too, but I just don't have the time necessarily to sit there for an hour. And this, I do it while I'm doing it right now. I mean, it's actually on right now. Do it while I'm working or just going about the day.
Well,
And
I
yeah,
think, okay, good, you covered. I'm just amazed by the fact that it's sort of designed to go into the radial artery, the directionality, and then the 3.6 liters of blood. You got this. This is like so fascinating to me that it could cover that much of your body's blood supply.
it is. It's pretty impressive. This is one of the things that really turned me on to it too. Is like, yeah, it's great if you want to do spot treatment, but the ideal would be to get this throughout the bloodstream, throughout the body. That way, it becomes sort of whole body low level laser therapy, and it mimics intravenous light that I'll show on a slide as we go a little bit long, a little bit along here. But I mean, why the wrist? The skin is thin. So when you wear it around the wrist like a watch like this, it's right on it. So the penetration is going to be deep, for all of the different wavelengths and which you see pictured here. Again, it's got red, yellow, green, blue. This one didn't, again, now it has near infrared, as I'll show a little bit later on, but it's getting, about 80% of the entire blood supply passes the wrist in an hour. So, thus, this is getting that systemic benefits. And again, this is the first version. So I'm going to show some studies on this now that deliver about 50 milliwatts of power. The one that Sarah and I have on our wrist now delivers, considerably more than that, almost 300 milliwatts of power. And it is kind of cool too for those that are into acupuncture. It was intentionally the diodes are located on the acupuncture points. So we see this here for those that are familiar with acupuncture. So that was another one of the thought process and one of the engineering behind this. Weber himself had acupuncture training that was going to enable, some of the benefits associated with that.
Well, I was going to say that's one of the great examples of taking the best from so-called East and West. Complementary alternative medicine tries to integrate in many ways some of the allopathic, scientific, technological with the ancient sort of herbal folkloric, but this is also taking the global wisdom that we have as a species and putting it together in a new way. And that's one thing about this. I was like, wow, they've really taken it to the next level.
Yeah, our university center has done, we've published over 1,000 papers at this point, but a lot of them were on acupuncture. So it was really neat to me to say, okay, they're incorporating the wisdom of acupuncture into light as well. And as far as what are some of the benefits for that? Well, I think most of us realize that we want to increase our HRV, or heart rate variability generally. It's a good measure of resilience to stress, and the wearable LLT device has been shown to do that. Improved circulation, again, no big surprise. We've got the green, yellow, and blue lights. They're going to do that. Very interestingly, this is studied on COVID recovery as well. And not to get too deep into this, but basically, the more dots you see, the worse off was. These are all different symptoms from headache and cough and fever and so on. And we can see that there was less. Fever is maybe most notable. The top one are those that were using the wrist low-level laser therapy device, and those that weren't on the bottom. I mean, basically, was no fever for those that were wearing it, and quite a bit for those that weren't.
I just wanted to add that there are many people, sort of like fighting in the health community around, okay, COVID's caused by, a virus particle, and those are like, oh, there's no viruses that are actually infectious, contagious, or can cause morbidity or mortality. And no matter what your view is, the reality is if you have this coherent light, both in the form of energy and information that has this beneficial effect, it's going to help the cells repair and or go through programmed cell death more efficiently, which would reduce the need for some of these symptoms, which are actually there to help the body repair itself. So, I just think that this is a pretty astounding, outcome considering we don't have many conventional pharmaceuticals that could do this without, a whole set of problems. So I'm, just observing, wow, that's quite a result.
Yeah, I really wish our public health authorities, I mean, again, I'm an epidemiologist, so don't blame me for the the policies, had emphasized the importance of being outside during the height of it. But I think we continue to learn, and could see here how light can be helpful, especially when it's focused and systemic like that.
Well, and also if
Um,
there's a lockdown requirement, it's harder to go outside, obviously, but with
right.
technology like this, I guess it doesn't matter in the sense of, all right, worst case scenario, at least I can get these therapeutic wavelengths that I would otherwise maybe get outside if you're lucky.
Yeah, let's hope there are no more lockdowns. But this it would be some way to get those therapeutic wavelengths, and especially for those, and even those that can. It's just that if anyone living above that 37 parallel, you're not gonna be able to get a lot of these benefits during the fall and winter. Um, so this is another study that was done that just go to show you. So the PDT is the those that were doing the LLT device. STD was the ones doing kind of standard therapy, and we can see improvements in coughing, breathing difficulties, headache, and fever from those that were doing this. And they were actually doing this with photodynamic therapy, which I'll talk a little bit more about. They were combining it with niacin. So this is the current version that Sarah and I have, the EndoLight, and just incredibly excited for all of the benefits that the previous generations had shown in some of these studies. And each one of these diodes is 7 times as powerful, and it has that infrared wavelengths as well. So what you end up doing is you're getting a lot more power with this. So again, you see all the where it's irradiating at the wrist, all the different wavelengths that you're going to be getting with this, and quite powerful. So 35 milliwatts per diode as opposed to 5 from the previous version. So this is a really exciting development. You can even sort of see this just visually with the amount of light, the output that you're going to get. I mean, again, a total of 50 milliwatts in the previous version that itself was pretty powerful and quite a nice device versus 280, for the version, the EndoLight.
With the
It could,
outcomes of the two previous studies, were those done on the previous version? The
yes, those were done on the previous version.
okay, wow.
So just the amount of power they're getting now just is really exciting. There's study going on with the EndoLight as well, and there's one that's been published that I'll show in a minute too. And a nice thing about this too, and so you'll probably notice this, is that the lasers are even more of it is contained in the body. Like I'm sure how that'll show up,
Yeah, I see.
but yeah, most of it is very well contained. Thus, it's getting into the body where you want it and not kind of leaking out, which is nice. So here's some research on the EndoLight. And again, oxygen saturation was an outcome looked at here, and we can see how that increases when wearing the EndoLight. Again, probably due to the high power of this device.
What do you think the mechanism of action is for that?
I think it's probably having to do with, again, I think we're missing the green and yellow in most of the therapy. So I think it's probably just the amount of power that it's getting. And just by stimulating that blood flow, it's probably helping enhance. I mean, if we recall back to the earlier slides, like with green, we know that green light helps enhance oxygen saturation
I see.
and delivers hemoglobin a little bit more effectively. So that my sense is that, again, not many of the devices have green.
Yeah.
So my suspicion is that it's probably due to green and yellow to an effect.
Well, I know that with millimeter wave technology, like the,
Mm.
say scanners or with 5G, one of the things it does seem to do is prevent the absorption of oxygen into hemoglobin. So we know wave lengths and wave forms affect that. So I imagine this is just optimizing by providing the natural spectrum that would be available to a healthy human, that sort of interaction. I'm something like that.
Yeah, it's a plausible mechanism. I mean, that my guess would be very similar. And something to think about too is you get more and more of the millimeter wave little mini towers all over the place. So.
Mhm.
These are the different modes that it has. Sarah mentioned this before, where there's the recover, which has all of the different wavelengths that the device offers. Recharge, that focuses more on those that are, ATP generating. This is one of the ones that I use in the morning or for kind of like that afternoon slump.
Yeah.
And relax is the one that gets into the sort of more calming. Now, interestingly, blue and green in the eyes, you generally want to avoid that. But when it's getting systemically like this, it tends to have more of a calming effect. So this is a nice one to use. I'll often use it a little bit in the evening. We're just trying to settle down. Right. So, Sayer mentioned this earlier, and I'm sure many of your viewers are fans of a Midwestern doctor. Just so much great stuff. But he had an article. This was back in June of this year that talked about UV light therapy. Just a great article and how much had been done with this, and it's just sort of been forgotten. So UV light therapy, and maybe some of your viewers have had it before, is really powerful. But the challenge is, it's sort of hard to find it, and you need to get, the intravenous setup. So the EndoLight was designed to mimic those effects. That was the intention of it. That's why it's put at the wrist. That's why it's put in this area where you're going to get, blood flow, 80% of the blood flow of the body in an hour, to sort of mimic that in a much easier way. You can do it just from home or wherever you are. So that's one of the things that got me excited about that. And Sarah, I don't know if you got any thoughts on this, but this is one of the things that I think
I mean,
is really cool.
this image is amazing. And look at this quantum leap because the IV method, one of the drawbacks is that, the actual IV can break. And the
Mhm.
design of this Endolight actually has it so that it matches that optimal angle, right? For like in the radial artery, as if it was an IV. So they've really thought about everything. And I think I'd much rather take the route on the right than the left. And you're not going and paying hundreds of dollars per treatment, you're able to administer it yourself safely with a wide range of benefits. So I really do think it's an amazing technology.
Well, we are aligned. That was essentially my motivations for it as well. And I talked about it at close with this, and I think this is going to be new to a lot of people, is this concept of photodynamic therapy. And it's really just it's photobiomodulation, it's PBM, synergy with light sensitive compounds or photosensitizers. Again, this is it's used a lot in integrative cancer therapy, but it's actually used a fair amount even in conventional cancer therapy in other parts of the world beyond the US. And really, what you're going to do with this, so for all the substances that I'm going to describe here, you want to consume these 30 to 60 minutes before light exposure, whether it's sunlight exposure or endo light exposure. And we'll start with blue. So this is actually one of the ones that was used in one of the papers of the Weber device earlier, is riboflavin. Riboflavin has a powerful, photosensitizing effect for blue light. So if someone's trying to fight something, for example, using a blue setting on this with some riboflavin can be quite powerful, as is curcumin and chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is really, the algae and seaweed are the ones you're going to see this probably the most potent natural photosensitizer that you'll find, because you're going to see that it enhances the absorption of many of these different wavelengths. Um, Green is the next one. So green is so again seaweeds. So red seaweeds here have been shown to enhance the effects of green light, as is Bengal rose. That one's a little bit harder to find. You don't find as much of that, but certainly you find seaweeds. Yellow has a number of different compounds that enhance the absorption of it. Once again, you get the phycocyanin, which is in chlorella, spirulina, the monostroma nitidum. You have a variety of different flavonoids, carotenoids, St. John's wort, the hypericin. It's interesting. They noticed that cows that were, eating a lot of St. John's wort, way more than you would ever take in a supplement, that they would sometimes get burned actually because they're out in the sun all day, and they would just eat massive quantities of this. So again, this is very real science and very potent effects. And then for red and near infrared, methylene blue has become pretty hot these days. It's a very powerful enhancer of red and near infrared. But if you want something more natural, once again, chlorophyll. So algae and seaweed, which is really, I'd say, the overall powerhouse of this. So spirulina, chlorella, algae, different seaweeds, if you want to optimize the effects of photobiomodulation.
Yeah, there's a blue algae extract that's just remarkable. And then I think butterfly PT might actually also have a beneficial property there. So
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I imagine, yeah, a lot of the blue, just blue colored. I've been kind of curious to see if like things like blueberries or the anthocyanins and so on. I haven't seen that published, but I would stand to reason that that might have some effect as well. So just to tie it all up, I mean, again, photobiomodulation is just ancient practice, recognizing that light is a nutrient, and it's an ancient practice, but it's one that, for those that aren't aware of the impact, are really hurting themselves, just given our modern lifestyles and just really poor lighting environments. So whether you're one who's in that kind of situation or one that is aware of the impact of light, there are a lot of modern devices that can optimize the effects of light in our health. I mean, I like this to think about this. And again, light is a nutrient. And EndoLight's kind of like the farmer's market of light because it offers the more
huh.
wavelengths at a higher power than anything else that I've seen. So that's what I've got. I don't know, Say, if you want to chat a little bit more and talk
Yeah.
about anything else.
Well, yeah, just, my life's work has been focused on helping to recontextualize the field of nutrition by looking at food as information. Dr. Hyman, of course, has done a lot on
Yeah.
that. And so for me, when food, light food is a nutrient, it's actually a form of information. And I feel like where medicine is moving is informational medicine. And that can include anything from your mindset, nocebo, placebo being probably the most powerful effects, I think, in all interventions, including allopathic and natural. And so when I see this light technology come into the forefront, I think it actually probably draws from very ancient healing technologies that are now seeing a resurgence. It's part of my notion that science, time is cyclical and the golden age is both in the past and the future. We're moving back towards it in a way, like an ancient
Yeah.
future. So for me, when I found this device, it was like I'm an episode of Star Trek and learning about, rubies being even the basis for the discovery of lasers. I've just started to really appreciate what I think this represents for people being able to take back full control of their health and do it in such a way that there is absolutely no adverse effect, which is an amazing thing. Even in the field of supplementation, as you know, at times you do end up with indications and other issues. So I'm just excited about this device. I know it's not cheap, right? About 2000 is 1900 or so.
Mhm.
However, for those who, can afford it and who put a lot into their, wellness and invest heavily in things like biohacking and longevity, when you really do the math on it, it's actually an incredible value because I use mine regularly. It's part of my daily regime. So yeah, so I'm really excited about that. I so appreciate you presenting the whole, in a way, history behind this. And yeah, I just leave it to you to maybe give a few closing remarks.
Yeah, my closing remark is, I mean, I love how you kind of tied a bow on that. I mean, that's kind of the way that I look at this too. I do think it's kind of coming full circle. A lot of things are. in terms of what was done traditionally and kind of what we're recognizing now as having been important. And I think it's great to be outside for a variety of reasons. Nothing beats that, but I think we can use some of what nature gives us and tailor that specifically for needs to just optimize our performance, and for those that are dealing with specific health issues, to help with that too. So it's another one. This has been a regular in I come across a lot of different devices that I'm interested in. I try for a while. I'm like, oh, that was cool, but it never really stuck. This one has stuck with me. It's like an essential for me. I run through actually 3 cycles of a day
Wow.
because again, I don't need to. I kind of struggled before finding time to sit in front of my panels and so on. So with this, just while I'm working, I've got it on, and I really think it's helped my energy levels, and I think people would find the same.
Yeah, and I would say if you're doing 2 cycles, that's about as much, well, that's your whole blood supply, isn't it? Two,
Yeah.
three, and that's a lot. And if it is really helping to create a coherent field where the cells can, in a way, self-organize or experience what's known as a negentropic or age reversing or disorder reversing effect, which is what I think it's actually doing, that's pretty profound. It's a way of just making sure your integrity bioenergetically is there every day. I do meditation every day. I set intentions. This isn't that different, only it's a technological version of that. Yeah. So, and also for those who are interested, the company thankfully has offered a discount just for our tribe, if you will. So down below, there's a discount code. I think it's like 10% off, which is significant. It's either 10 or 5, but either way, it's something. So once again, thank you so much for your dedication. You do so much to educate and give information to the world without thinking about any benefit for yourself. Once people realize the work you've done in other fields too, their jaws will drop because you've done incredible things to help people see that some of those so-called irreversible conditions out there actually are reversible. You've even published on it. So once again, thank you for your dedication and for this presentation. I'm sure people will get a lot out of it.
My pleasure, Sarah. I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
All right, take care.